Shalom Chavarim from the heartland of Israel, the region, Benjamin region. My name is Ishai Harel, and today we're continuing our chapter 2 of Avot, Pirkei Avot, the sayings, the ethics of our fathers that lived for almost 2,000 years ago, with wisdoms that go back to Moshe Rabbeinu. And today is Shiur Chamesh, lesson 5, and we continue in chapter 2. The last time we ended with talking about, let's say, where was I? Do not separate yourself from the community. And we learned that we should stick together at all times, at good times and at bad times. But if we don't stick together, and if things are going difficult and we run away, we will also not be able to enjoy the blessings, because the blessings always come. And we learned that Moshe Rabbeinu also, when Am Israel was in battle against Amalek, Moshe Rabbeinu was there. He stood up a mountain, he held up his hands hand high, and he was praying for the help of Hashem. And his hands, when he got tired, he didn't go to sleep, but then two of his men came and grabbed his arms so that his arms would keep on high to heaven, because if his arms lowered, the Amalek would be stronger than Israel. But if he held up his hands and his arms high to heaven, the victory came quickly. And we can learn that Moshe Rabbeinu and also Am Israel did not run away when things were difficult, but they sticked together. So we have to stick together also in pursuing, in being involved actively in the Torah study and in Torah application to our lives. If we want that our character traits will develop, will be refined, will be shaped by the Torah, then we have to stick together, to learn from each other, to learn from Torah, to learn from Hashem. And if we do that, we will see a greater glory, because Hashem blesses us if we are 10, He will bless us. The blessing of studying Torah together will be much bigger than when you study Torah alone. Proverbs 14:28 says, in a multitude of people is a king's glory. So we should not separate ourselves from the community and thereby diminish the glory of Hashem, of His kingdom. So it says also that if you separate yourself from the glory, you are also liable of not permitting the greatest blessing possible for the community, because you take something away. If you go away, you don't get a blessing. But if you separate yourself, the community will be smaller, and the bigger the community, who stronger, who multiplied, will be the blessing of the kingdom. Rambam even says that he who separates himself from the community activities has no share in the world to come. He considered this very severe if people cut themselves off or go away from the community. So we're learning from the book of Avot, and we are going to continue with the next line. But before that, one of our greatest rabbis within the Musar is Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and he wrote some very wonderful books on Musar, which enter a lot of personal themes, character traits. When now with the ethics of the fathers, with the Musar of Avot, we are thinking about very deep thoughts they had about being able to refine your character. But Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, was able to become very, very personal. Bezrat Hashem, after we finished the Avot, because we're now the time in between Pesach and Shavuot is the best time to study Avot, and every year again we take the time to study the sayings, the wise ethical sayings, the Musar of Avot. But Bezrat Hashem, we have time to also study other things. Moshe, your leader, Moshe Samuel, also asked me about studying from the Shulchan Aruch, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. And I would also be delighted to share with you about the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. So let's see, maybe in a few weeks' time, I'll find a time to also start a series of lessons of shiurim about the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, in order that we get more familiar with halacha, the practical instructions how to live Torah day to day in our personal lives. One of the things Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto said was the following: the quality of love involves more deeds than other qualities. And when a man uses, or a woman uses the quality of love for evil, there is not a single quality so evil. But when a man uses the quality of his love for good, then that quality is higher than all others. As it is written, and you shall love the Hashem your God, in Deuteronomium, in Devarim 6 verse 5. There is no greater virtue in the service of the Creator than he who serves Hashem out of love. Devarim 10 verse 12 and 13 says, and now, O Israel, what does Hashem your God demand of you? Only this, to revere Hashem your God, to walk only in his paths, to love him, to serve Hashem your God with all your heart and soul. And I would like to add, because maybe you're not sure, but when the Torah says with all your heart and soul, and somewhere else it says with all your strength, heart and soul, it also means with all of your character traits, with all of your characteristics. We should serve Hashem with all our being, keeping his commandments and laws, which I enjoy upon you today for your good. If we take everything in our character to serve Hashem on a daily basis through everything we do, then there will be great revelations also of what we can learn more about Hashem in his Torah. And Torah will be a living book, not a history book, but it will teach us day to day new insights about who God is, and new insights how the mitzvot can not only help us to have a better character, but also to give us physical and spiritual health. I read somewhere the following, about the purpose of Midot. It was written on the website of Chabad, but there was no name of a rabbi by it. So the character is the only aspect of man that is his own creation. The body isn't given, and the soul comes straight from God. It is only in his Midot, the unique blend of mind and emotion that each person develops through the exercise of his free will, that he becomes an enduring individual. Moreover, it is also through the Midot that he fashions that each human being develops his own way of fulfilling the commandment of Behalachta Bitvoroch, of following in the ways of Hashem. Contact with God on a mature level is only possible through one's Midot. The intimate spiritual contact with God is the source of the joy experienced in the next world. The intimate spiritual contact with God, that is the source of the joy experienced in the next world, can only take place between personalities that have reached a true meeting of minds. The fleeting inspiration of spiritual highs is as temporary as everything else in our present existence. The Torah aims for something more permanent. Again and again, everywhere you read about Musar, it says that we have to refine our character traits, our characteristics, that we have to follow in his way. Psalm 119, verse 105 says that the word of Hashem is a lamp for our feet and a light on our path. The word of Hashem, that can only be one thing, Torah. Torah gives us light. Torah shines on the way ahead of us, so that we can walk on his ways and can choose his ways. 1 Chronicles 28:9 says the following: since it is clear to every wise man the need for perfection of the divine service and the necessity for its purity and cleanliness, for without this it is certainly not acceptable at all, but rather it is repulsive and despised, since Hashem searches all hearts. Remember, he is the eye that sees everything. He is the one that has an attentive ear. That Hashem searches all hearts and discerns all the imaginations of the thoughts. But if you seek him, he will be found of you and by you. But if you forsake him, he will cast you off forever. Stay close to Hashem and permit the Torah to refine yourself. Tehillim 86, Psalm 86, verse 11 says, may God be our trust and keep our feet from stumbling. Proverbs 3, verse 26 says, and may there be fulfilled in us the request of the psalmist, beloved of his God. Teach me your ways, O God, and I shall walk in your truth. Make one my heart to fear your name. Everything in the Torah and everything in the Tanakh breathes one thing, that we are made to serve Hashem with all of our strength and with all of our being, with all of our love, that we are made by Hashem to serve him, to walk in his ways and to look for his ways. Because many of us have lived other lives, but now we are here together with Torah and with the wisdom of the fathers. Now we can really be refined and tuned we come closer to Hashem, we can understand. And maybe if we do a Rav of my explained that every time we do a mitzvah, maybe we understand 1/1,000,000th of a 1,000,000th single piece of Hashem. So if we do another mitzvah, again, maybe because we do that mitzvah, somehow we get an understanding of who Hashem is for 1,000,000 of a 1,000,000th part. But everything counts. Everything counts. We should be we should be longing to serve Hashem with all of our love and our being. And to make him be fond of us. To make sure that he is happy with our lives. To make sure that when there are things in our lives that are not conform to Torah, that we adapt to Torah. And we permit Torah to correct us. To correct our characters. So that we not only will be a good servant of Hashem, but that together in the community, towards each other, we will be faithful, trustful, strong, and loving, and caring for each other. Because as how we started today, the strength of the community provides in a much stronger blessing of Hashem than when you are alone. And if you cut yourself off from the community, maybe because you are going through the community is going through a difficult time, or you are going through a difficult time, then Rambam says it might be possible that you are cutting yourself off even from the Olam Haba. If you have a difficult time, stay close to the community and permit the community to be your strength. And if the community goes through a difficult time, stick together and make each other strong through Torah. And if the community is going through a wonderful time, use that opportunity to learn even more of Torah and to become stronger characters, stronger, more beautiful, wonderful servants of Hashem. Baruch atah Adonai Melech shehakol yeh b'Torah. The next thing Hillel says is, do not believe in yourself until the day you die. That means you never should be thinking of yourself that you are already so mature in Torah that you can rest, that it will be all right with you, and that you can do other things. No, we never are finished in this life to study Torah. We never are finished with understanding Hashem and Torah. We never are finished. Don't let your guard down. The moment you let your guard down, that's the moment sin enters again. That's the moment you will not longer rise, but glide down. And we don't want that. Do not judge your fellow until you have reached his place. It is very easy to, when we see somebody else in our community, somebody else of our brothers and sisters, making maybe a mistake, it's very easy to judge them. But we should not do that. We should keep in mind, first of all the things which Hashem has forgiven in our lives, from our lives. And second, if we have not been in the same situation as our fellow man or woman, then we should not judge them, but we should help them to get up again, to start over again. Do not make a statement that cannot be easily understood, assuming that it will be understood eventually. statement is for the teachers, mainly. A teacher must use clear language and make sure his lessons can be easily, readily understood, not leaving doubt. It's very easy for teachers for ones that give studies, to give some difficult thinking in our shiurim, and then we give them something that when they go home they still will be thinking about it. But Hillel says we should not do that. Of course, people can go home and still think about what they learned, but it must be clear what they learned. We cannot leave them with the feeling that you have reached them maybe a key to a secret of the Torah, but you didn't give them actually the secret. You just revealed that it would be wonderful. It's very difficult for students to understand something that is not explained to them. And even if they try to understand it, they will all have their own understanding. And it may be even not a good understanding. Do not say, when I am free, I will study, for perhaps you will not become free. You must never think that today isn't too busy day to study Torah, and that tomorrow will be a better day to study Torah. We should put an effort to take everyday time to pray, to say our tefillot, to learn Torah, to take time to evaluate ourselves in the light of Hashem. Torah must be our first priority. He used to say, a boor cannot be fearful of sin. A boor is someone that is uncultivated, unlearned. He has good qualities, but he does not have any knowledge of Torah. If someone has not any knowledge of Torah, you cannot expect him to understand a lot. You can also not expect him to walk his ways perfectly to Torah. He will do it if you tell him, but maybe someone is not able to understand those things by himself. But most of the time, a boor is also not capable of being a sin-fearing people because he doesn't understand what is sin. He's never learned to react to ethical teachings, to apply them to his own life. An unlearned person cannot be scrupulous, pious. We're talking about an am haaretz, somebody of the land. It is a person who is honest and is fearful from sin, and he tries to be a good person. He knows that Hashem and Torah asks from him to walk according to Torah. But he hasn't learned Torah. He just heard Torah, but he didn't learn Torah. So he may have appreciation, but he doesn't know completely how to perform and fulfill the mitzvot. So if you really want to know more about Hashem and to understand more about Torah, please don't be a boor. Don't be a ma'aretz. Don't be an unlearned person. But enforce yourself to dive in every day, a little piece of Torah. And when you are together in the community, to study Torah together. A bashful person cannot learn. A bashful person is one who is ashamed to ask questions during his studies because he is afraid that his fellow students will laugh at him, or he is afraid that his question would be a dumb question and the Rav maybe will not answer his question, but none of those is an excuse. You must, you may feel shame, but you must overcome that shame and ask your questions in order to learn. We're talking about respectfully ask our questions. And if the Rav explains us, or if the teacher explains us again, and we still don't understand it, we should ask it again. And we should ask it again until we understand. Proverbs 30, verse 32 says, if you shame yourself, you will be uplifted. For if you muzzle yourself, put a hand upon the mouth. If you shame yourself, put yourself in the position that maybe people don't like you ask you those questions. So you feel like shame. Doesn't matter. What matters is that if you have a thirst for Torah, that you will ask those questions until you understand. Doesn't matter if you need to ask the same question the same day or the next day. Can be, maybe, because our rabbis are also people with their, of course, strong character traits, and sometimes they don't have the time, or they're tired, or maybe, I don't think so, but it could be. Sometimes a rabbi is somehow irritated by a question because he is so concentrated in what he wants to teach, that he doesn't want to stay stuck on one subject. But as long as the student stays respectfully, with an attitude, has a respectful attitude towards the rabbi, he can ask that question again. Don't be afraid of the reaction of a rabbi, of a teacher. Don't be afraid from the reactions from your fellow student, because if it really would be a strong, nice, good group of students, they would be happy if you are able to learn what they maybe already understand, because together we are stronger. One who is excessively occupied in business cannot become a Torah scholar, because if you're very busy in business and you work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, what time is there left for Torah study? My friends, look for a balance. And sometimes life is difficult and we have to work to provide for our families. But please try to find some time to seek Hashem and to study His Torah. Because that is the only way our character will change. Maybe in our work, we are all day surrounded by people that don't live confirmed Torah. And without knowing it, it affects you negatively. We should clean ourselves every day through our prayers and studies in order to be able to refine our character daily. Don't forget, our insights and our teachings of how to become a good servant of Hashem didn't come from people, but it came from heaven itself. It came from our Creator. And if there is a need in a community for teachers, and there are no teachers, maybe you can be the one that shares the things he learned that day from Torah. And then we all can become teachers. But Baruch Hashem, if your community has teachers, you should really learn from them. Listen to them. ask them your questions. Hillel saw also a skull floating on the water, and he said to the skull, because you caused the hands of others to float, others caused your head to float. Because you caused the hands of others to float, others caused your head to float. This is about mida keneged mida, a measure for a measure. Hashem always repays. So if a murderer murdered somebody, even if he doesn't get a punishment on earth by a court, just a court of the country, by judges of the country, he's not caught for his action maybe. But Hashem, we learned that all things are written down. So Hashem knows what that person has done if he has killed somebody. And maybe in some other situation where in another year, he or she also will be killed by somebody else. And that somebody else will also be guilty. But maybe, that's how should I explain? Maybe Hashem uses that other person to punish the first killer, but it isn't true. It is not just that because that person is used by Hashem to punish the first killer, that the second one is not guilty. He or she is also guilty. But a lot of times, that person was also already guilty for example, killing. But sometimes Hashem uses situations and people that are for us not connected to each other, but he uses to do measure for measure, to do mida keneged mida. We should be aware of that, and we should live a holy life in order not to be measured by this. Ask forgiveness if we make mistakes. And on Rosh Hashanah, in Yom Kippur, we should be sure that we made up with all our people around us, and that we ask forgiveness to them, and also ask forgiveness to Hashem, so that He will give us a good ruling for the next year. And eventually those who caused you to float will be caused to float themselves. That's what I just explained. The difficult thing about this, or not the difficult thing, but the interesting thing about this is that Hillel says he saw a skull floating on the water, and he said, because you caused the head of others, etc. In this situation, he knew that the skull that he saw floating, from who it was. And he knew that the punishment he received now, there floating in the water, was because he caused the same thing to others. Had Hillel not recognized the skull as that one of a known murderer, he could not have said these things. Devarim 30 says, in verse 11 says, the instructions which I enjoin upon you, which I give you today, is not difficult. It's not beyond your reach. He's talking about Torah. Moshe says, Hashem says, the Torah is not difficult. It is not beyond your reach. It's not in the heavens that you should say, who among us can rise up to heavens to get it for us and to impart it in us, that we may observe it. No. Torah is given through the hands of Moshe Rabbeinu to us in our hands. It's here on earth. Neither it is beyond the sea that you should say, who among us can cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us and impart it into us, that we may observe it. No, the Torah is given into your hands. It's so close to you. It is in your mouth. It is in your heart. If you take every day your portion of Torah and study it, it will certainly make you a better person. It will treat your character traits. The Musar of Hashem from heaven will make you a better person. Hillel used to say, the more flesh, the more worms, the more possessions, the more worry, the more wives, the more witchcraft, the more maidservants, the more lewdness, the more manservice, the more thievery. So 5 comparisons. The first one is says, he used to say, the more flesh, the more worms. He is saying that if you become a very thick and fat, big person, and you die, there will be more for the worms to eat, more flesh. But he doesn't see it as positive. He is trying to warn us that we should not overindulge in food and drink, that we should not drink and eat more than that we are than what we need, not become 400 kilos, not be able to sit up ourselves again. And apparently Hillel was saying this in that time and at this time to people that need this warning. The more possessions, the more worry. Think about it. If you become rich and you buy more and more things, you worry about more and more things, the more things can be stolen. So maybe if you're very rich and blessed by Hashem, you should not spend it all on things and property that can be taken away from you and which can certainly not be taken with you to heaven. Of course, we can have property and we can have possessions, but we should manage it wisely in order that it doesn't make us so much worry that we don't have time to study Torah anymore. 3, the more wives, the more witchcraft. This is about the men that have more than one woman, and the rabbis of today doesn't allow us. And I think that's a good thing to have more than one wife, because the more wives, if you have more wives, they can become jealous of each other, and they can even, what it says here, they can even do witchcraft, because they're so jealous. They try to use powers that the other wives will not be in favor, and that she herself will be in favor. And I myself cannot imagine that happening in my own life, and I'm glad the rabbis don't allow us anymore. Seems to me very difficult to manage more than one wife. Abraham Avinu had 4, Jacob Avinu had 4 wives. And we can read in the Torah that sometimes it brought him some tensions. But Baruch Hashem, Hashem built Am Israel through Yaakov Avinu, through his wives. But for today, don't have more than one wife. One wife is more than sufficient. The more maidservants, the more lewdness. Hillel is of the opinion that if you have maidservants in your household and you have too much of them, because of the maidservants are promiscuous. That means they have they flirt a lot, and their behavior is not always as it should be. So we should not have too much of those people in our household, because that will ruin the kadosh environment of your house. And the more manservants, the more thievery. Hillel is of the opinion that manservants steal if we have a lot of them, they have time left to steal, and they will steal. So I don't know. I don't have any servants in my house. I just have to clean everything together with my wife and kids. We're good. And I hope you also will be all good. But if you have the ability of having people working for you as maid or manservants, treat them nice. We learned that already in chapter 1, as if they are a part of your own family, and don't have too much of them. Don't give them the opportunity to bring sin into your house. And 5, the more we already treated that. And now he comes with another few sayings. He says, however, so on the contrary, the more Torah, the more life. Torah in Devarim 30:20, it is written, by loving Hashem your God, heeding his commandments and holding fast to him, for thereby you shall have life and shall long endure upon the soul that Hashem swore to your ancestors Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to give for them. A long life and lengthy days. Also in Proverbs 9:11, it is written, instruct a wise man and he will grow wiser. Teach a righteous man and he will gain in learning. The beginning of wisdom is fear for Hashem, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For through me, says Hashem, your days will increase and years will be added to your life. Studying Torah will intensify and lengthen, make our days on this world longer. It also says that Torah may make our days on this earth longer, but it will also make us be blessed by, when we pass on to the next world, to the Olam Haba, that we will also come there, that we have a share in the world to come. The more students, the more wisdom. It's very simple. Not every student is the same. If you make a lot of students, and all those with their own particular way of studying Torah, with their own characters, eventually will be a multiplication of insight and wisdom in Torah. The more counselors, the more understanding. We should not be afraid when there are difficult questions to answer, situations to handle, to seek counsel of other people. And that counsel is not only by wise people, more wise than you, but you can also seek counsel by people that are not as wise as you. For example, seek advice from your students. We read that in the first verses of Bereshit, where it says that Hashem says, let us make this world, let us make people, let us create. Hashem sought counsel with the angels, which he created before he created the world and us. And he asked the angels, what should I do? What do you think? I've created Torah. I've created the Aleph Bet. And I'm on the verge of creating the world and trees and plants and animals and even people. What do you think? What should I do? And he listened to their advice before he started to create. Doesn't mean just because you are a leader or a teacher or wiser than somebody else, that you cannot ask somebody else his opinion about something, because everybody has his own angle of viewing things. And we should follow the example of Hashem, our God. The more charity, the more peace. Yeshayahu 32 verse 17 says, and it will be that the act of charity will bring peace. It will bring peace to you, and it will also bring peace to the ones that receive your charity. One who has gained a good reputation has gained this for his own benefit. All the things you do in this life, all the things you get for yourself, how much wealth you get for yourself, you cannot take it with you when you pass away from this life to the next life. But your good name you can take along with you, because your good name will be written in the books of life or in the books of remembrance, and hopefully not in the book of sins. And then the last one for the shiur of today is 2.7, the last line. One who has gained himself Torah knowledge has gained himself the life of the world to come. Again and again, the Torah is the key to life. Torah is the key to blessing. Torah is the key to be healthy, to be prosperous, to be and feel blessed. And the Torah is also the key to refine our character. The Torah came from heaven. The Musad of Hashem is the one that helps us being better persons, to help us to make from this creation, the world, the people and everything around us, a success. Maybe if you look around, things don't look like the world is a great success of norms and values and etc. But it starts with ourselves. If we start to refine ourselves, to let ourselves be corrected by Torah, it will bring us life. And if we have life, people around us will be asking us, why are you so happy? Why are you always patient? Why are you so blessed? People get interested, and eventually they will also be wanting to get to know the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem, the God of Israel. There are things that we learn today that you maybe do not understand, so speak with each other about it. Ask the teachers in your community about it. But one small, simple advice I want to leave with you, I teach it you earlier in a lesson before, imagine that you are standing before God all time with everything you do. Just think about with everything you do. Imagine yourself standing before Hashem, telling Him what you are going to do, and then decide for yourself. Should I really do this? Should I not do this? And if you should not do it, don't do it, and realize that's exactly the point where you have to tune yourself, refine yourself to correct your character. To be able that all things you do in life, and all things you say, and all things you think, that everything you are able to do all those things also when you are in the presence, standing before Hashem. And if that's the case, we will be perfect. Bezrat Hashem, we will reach kadosh lives, pure lives, dedicated lives, soon. להתראות from Israel. Bye.